whenever, like now. Okay, great. Morning. Good morning. Welcome, everybody, to the Saturday Morning Mastermind. I'm your host, Samantha Studebaker Carl, and today we're going to be talking about Chapter 2 of the 5 Love Languages. And this chapter discusses the roles that people have played in your adolescent life that have carried over into your current life and current relationships. And it also talks about a couple of different stages of relationships and the importance of kind of knowing what those stages are and, understanding how to navigate a new relationship. And just some basic tips on that. So, but before we get going, I want to give everybody an opportunity to introduce themselves, and then we can get started on Chapter 2 of the 5 Love Languages. Go ahead and jump out. Sandy, since you're already unmuted, why don't you start?
Oh, I'm unmuted. Good morning, Sandy Ruth. I'm a little cuckoo today. I just posted a meme in the group chat, actually, how the universe is forcing everyone to look at all their shadows and unresolved traumas right now. So I think this chapter will fit about like parental traumas. So, because that's a lot what I'm looking at too, is like this old stuff from the past with parents. Anyway, Sandy Ruth in sunny Miami Beach, and looking forward to this conversation.
Morning, it's Catherine Clement in Boulder, Colorado, and this should be a fun chapter to talk about. Looking forward to it.
Dan Sissick in sunny and muggy Las Vegas, because we're still having fun with what we call our monsoon season. I know all of you guys are all laughing at me because it's, you guys like to say rain. What rain? It's not really raining there, but for us it's sticky and yucky and blah. And so I'll be so glad when it's done and gone. But otherwise, I'm looking forward to what we're going to be talking about today.
At the beginning of this chapter, it says, positive and affirming relationships bring great pleasure, but unhealthy relationships can bring deep pain. I would be so bold as to suggest that life's greatest happiness is found in good relationships, and life's deepest hurt is found in bad relationships. What do you guys think about that? Would you say that holds true in your life, that some of the greatest things have been in good relationships and some of the worst have been in bad?
I will say, to me, in basic aspects, yes, but I've also, it's been a little flip too sometimes, because out of some of the worst relationships, when I look back, I realized for me, it gave me the best. It's a little hindsight, but some of the best insights into myself too, and how I could have maybe reacted or changed or done things. Now, doesn't mean I ever have taken that advice or carried that forward. Sometimes no, because I think sometimes we get so rooted in the type of person we are and how we are and how we see ourselves, that even though we see those things, we forget to work on them and carry them forward, so that way we don't make the same mistake again.
Yes, on reading this, I mean, everything in life is a relationship. Everything as we're moving through the world is a relationship, even if it's not a human. Like my business is a relationship. Like having that interaction with another anything is a relationship. So I think there's that. We can look at the greatest happiness in different ways, not necessarily with the human relationship, but with things that we're doing with relationships in different ways. This makes sense. But yeah, I mean, but on the same front, I think because relationships, we don't see ourselves unless we're in relationships, and we really see the mirror of ourselves and where we're at as well. So if a relationship is bad, it can be really painful. Yeah. And good, if you're in a good state in a relationship, it can be complete bliss. So I get what he's saying there, but I think there's other greatest happinesses as well besides good relationships. Like there's other things in life that can bring great happiness. But relationships are, of course, I mean, every moment we're relating to something that's part of our experience here. So it's hard to put into words in a way.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I would say my best experiences have been my relationships with nature and animals, and my worst ones have been with humans. That pretty much sums it up. And if that's a statement on where I'm at, so be it.
Yeah, I was going to say that too. Like nature for me is a major relationship that is important for me, and I feel maybe sometimes the most nurtured by my relationship with nature, and even with my cat. Like you said, sometimes I'd rather be with my cat than a human. So I know what you're saying.
Yeah, there's times where I'm just sitting here at home, and right now with my roommate being gone and on his army stuff, but I have some goldfish, and sometimes there are times I'm just sitting there watching the goldfish, and it was funny. This last week, I was thinking, I wish that sometimes I had your view of life, because you see something and then you know 30 seconds later you've forgotten it and you turn around and it's there again and it's like a whole new thing again. It's like, there are times where I wish I could just dump a lot of things that I just don't really want to remember, but they're also parts of what make me up as to who I am. So in that, but it would be nice every now and then to just be able to just dump even a little bit, just to, totally not have it there and turn around and have it all be new again at that time. So, yeah, sometimes just sitting and watching my goldfish has been kind of just a refreshing thing. It kind of just helps me clear my mind.
Oh, there for a second, I didn't think my unmute button was going to work, but I totally agree with the whole nature thing, and I feel like there for a few years I did kind of just withdraw, I don't know, from the rest of the world when we went and did our RV thing, and I spent a lot of time in nature during that period of my life, and I look back on that time versus the time that I am in right now with relationships like work relationships and my family and my husband and then I compare to that time before I took that kind of sabbatical from everything, and things were a lot more difficult back then, and it was a lot of times related to relationships. It was either like relationships with my husband or with work related ones in particular. I struggle a lot with that because sometimes things would come up and there'd be these big conflicts between, well, like when I had my pet salon, I had a huge conflict with the vet clinic folks that were that I was renting space from, because I wanted to do like a big lease agreement jump on me, and that was going to cost me like it was like an extra $500 a month in this lease, and that was like a big deal. It was like a game changer for my business because I couldn't afford to do that, and so we had this big struggle, and I thought, I wish that I had known some of the things that I know now to have navigated that whole relationship. It would have been different. And and I think back on earlier relationships in of course the beginning of my relationship with my husband, we went through a lot of struggles, but I have noticed that over the years, a lot of times it is relationships that cause the biggest frustration in life with other people. And not that things don't happen that aren't related to relationships that are, not so great, or, there's lots of stuff that happens that is wonderful that doesn't have so much to do with relationships, but I have noticed that, you know, when you are getting along with people and when you are communicating well, as everything goes so much smoother. And when you're not, then it's just difficult, you know. So, um, and I feel like we, you know, now I can notice and recognize, you know, the role that I'm playing in that situation, and I can make changes so that it helps a relationship. I think earlier when back, what was it? I think it was in the last book. I was, you know, we had a new person who came into my work that I felt like there was some just really big tension with. And, but when I recognized what I was doing to cause that tension, it all went away, you know? And so it's just interesting how, I mean, everything comes from within us that is just projected out onto other people, or, you know, the things that they do, we feel however we're going to feel. And regardless of what it is that they actually are doing or feeling, it may be something completely different. But you know, when you guys were talking about, you know, like your cat and your fish and your dog, and you know, and I think about my dog, it's interesting because I can come down in the grumpiest mood, and I could yell at him for no reason. And of course, I think it's a reason, but he doesn't even recognize it as anything. And, you know, and then 10 minutes later, he's just like, oh, la, 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 you know, like it never even happened. I'm like, God, if we could just all be like that, you know, like, you know, somebody says something to us and we just are like, oh, well, that was shocking. Okay. So anyway, I'm having a great day. You know, it's funny like that.
Yeah, why can't we be like puppy dogs? Oh, well, yeah, as he's talking, I'm realizing how I guess a lot of times, like, how, yeah, the deepest hurt can be found in relationships too. Like, I'll tend to overanalyze things, like, between somebody and I, if there's some discord, and drive myself nuts. And it's like, just be like, oh, okay, like a dog would be like so much better. And then I realize half the time that I'm analyzing and making it all crazy, like they're not even thinking about it, or that nothing happened really. It was just me making stuff up in my head half the time. It's insane.
Yeah, I was gonna jump in on this puppy dog thing and stuff too, because I've had dogs and cats, you know, most of my life until I've been out on my own, and I don't have the facilities to deal with that. But yeah, it's like dogs where, like you were talking about, Samantha, where we can come and yell at them and, you know, this and that and the other thing with them. And they just, like you said, they look at you and go, okay, and they go off to their thing. But then a little while later, they come up and, like, put their head on your lap, or you have your elbow and they put, work their head under your elbow, and then kind of just look at you and just like, and give you that unconditional love, which is what we're all really looking for in all the relationships, I think, that we're trying to establish for the most part, except maybe work per se, but we still want some form of acceptance or likability or something to where we feel that we're contributing. And but when we are kind of in that crosshairs, or like you were saying, Sandy, that we make a mountain out of a molehill, and I'm like you, I overanalyze every relationship. I tend to say, well, that person kind of made me feel this way today, so what did I do? What could I have done? And I just go on, and I just spin out this huge scenario, and I've actually had to catch myself and say, stop, look, unless they come to me, or unless they've really told me something, they're probably not even realizing that I think there's an issue. Why am I carrying on? And I have to kind of pull myself back. And do I do it all the time? No. Half the time I don't. I want to sit there and be in my little because I really want them to act and conform and give me everything that I want in the way I want it, rather than realizing and going back, like this book is saying, looking at the other person and what speaks to them. So that way, in turn, it allows them the opportunity to want to give back to me in the same way what I need. But we can't even expect that. All I can do is put it out there, hopefully. But I, you know, I think that's a big thing, and I think it kind of fits in, like just at the beginning of the book when you were reading, Samantha, about how you felt by your mother or father or this. And to me, that's been a framework probably of how I look at everything is the differences between my real mom and stepdad and how my grandmother was and the feelings and, how my grandmother felt and how they felt. And I tend to put everything into these two worlds, and it's a big constant battle for me and trying to, you know, get the one I want, but yet half the time dealing with the other side that I don't want. So, yeah, it's interesting how dogs can just really make us feel better.
So one of the things that the beginning of this chapter suggests is that that our parents play a big role in our relationships, and in our experience with our parents. What do you guys? How have you noticed in your relationships how? Um, I'm not sure how I'm supposed to word this, or how I should word this. You know your relationship with your parents. How is that? How are you recognizing how things that are from the past have affected your relationships, and if so, like how?
Okay, I'll jump out on this one too because I guess I've got a lot to say today. I'm not realizing it. For me, I think it's interesting over the last year or so after seeing how my roommate is with his daughter, and I've noticed some things about her that are things I do. Now she doesn't get that from me. It's just I think been a natural play out, but I've seen he's a great father, but I've seen him be a little strict and a little, you know, do this and do it my way, and I'm telling you this way. But she's not him, and I'm seeing that, and he's trying to fit her into that mold that he wants her to be, rather than seeing her for who she is, even though he sees her for who she is. But do you get kind of what I'm getting at? Whereas with my parents, same thing. I kind of, with the abuse and stuff and things, and I've noticed, something where she'll do something and then she'll automatically say, "I'm sorry," and I do that all the time with people, because I'm so wanting um, that affirmation and that that it's that everything that you did it right, that it's okay, that this, you know and it's kind of, it's not my I can't really get in the middle of it, but I'm seeing it, and it has brought me back to my where I've been with my own and people in general. When I do things and something doesn't go right, or if I feel I've done something wrong, I apologize for not having done it right, which is not really the real problem. I make mistakes. I'm human and I do it, but I just internalize it so much and put it all on me that, and I know exactly where it came from. It comes from my real mom and stepdad, and that, aspect, and it's really been eye-opening for me because I'm trying to work on that a little bit more and give myself a little bit of leeway to say it's okay. You just, it happens. Not everything is your fault, or you didn't do everything wrong. And it's interesting to see how that's, opened up my eyes on some things.
I don't know. Like, I just don't think about my childhood. I mean, I know that there's stuff in your subconscious that affects you like on a daily basis and stuff. But it's interesting when I listen to other people talk, there's people that like just live in the past all the time, and I don't I don't do that. And yet I know for a fact that, my past has definitely affected my relationships. But I don't know. I still just feel like I'm from another planet or something, because it just feels like 98% of the stuff that most people get so wrapped up over, like I could care less about. Like what is the big deal? And it's like I don't have any feelings, and I don't think that that's necessarily a healthy thing. I'm not saying it is, but at the same time, it's like these different love languages. This one on this chapter is gift giving, which is like my least love language. And of course, loving other people is caring enough to learn what their love language is and then do that for them. And quite honestly, I don't know if I just don't love anybody or what, but like sometimes I just don't, like I don't know. I just I don't understand humans, which is why I'm here, trying to learn about them, trying to learn about myself. But I see people and I hear people that just dwell on things that happened, 60 years ago in their life or whatnot, and it confounds me. Like it blows my mind that there's still, like, it's all I can do to get through today without worrying about yesterday. I don't understand how these people make it through their lives. And it's, the last chapter was words of affirmation. I guess it has a lot to do with what your love language is. Like, to me, words of affirmation, talk is cheap. People say shit all the time that they don't mean, that, they say things to build up other people that aren't true. People just say lots of things. And gift giving, people, the most gifts I've ever received was from an abusive ex. I had a whole house of, it looked like a mortuary, the dried roses hanging in my house, because every time he would fuck up, he would buy me roses, and I would hang them to dry in the house. I had roses in hanging from every ceiling in that house. So gifts to me are just worthless. And that's horrible to somebody who's giving me a gift whose love language is gift giving. You know what I mean? Because like here they feel like they've really gone over and above to give me something, and I'm looking at it like, what do you want? Seriously, just to be truthful, I just look at it like, what do you want? What are you trying to get out of me or make me do or whatever? So it's this whole thing is very complicated, and I don't want to overanalyze it. Like, I don't want to sit around thinking about it all the time, quite honestly, because like you guys said, you can just spin off into this endless drain of energy is what it feels like to me. And when you get down to the bottom of it, like, it was all you anyway, evidently. So yeah, the Tao of the dog, just like say, oh well, and move on, I guess. I don't know how you ever get to the bottom of these things. What I do know is that, you, unfortunately, if you've been talked to harshly or stuff, those are definitely habits that you can pick up, and you also pick them up as a defense mechanism, And so people who have been spoken harshly to do pretty much respond in one of two ways. Either don't talk to anybody, or they, speak harshly. So when you're a parent, evidently you can't say anything to your kids because they're going to remember it 60 years from now and hold you accountable. And so it makes it a very, and like we talked about last week, it could be stuff that you don't even remember. So it makes it a really scary situation, I think, to be in relationship with other people knowing that, and I know, I mean, I can't really think of anything that anybody said to me that has stuck with me like throughout my life or anything, because I never put enough weight on anybody else's words. Like, because it's usually about them. You know, if they're upset and saying words that are hurting me, it's usually still something that they're dealing with, not me, you know? So I don't know how we figure all this out, you guys. Like, it's crazy. Don't you think? I mean, it's sort of insane.
You know, I was thinking about my relationship with my kids and my relationship with my parents, and how, yeah, I have like these issues with my parents that are because of whatever happened back then. And it's not like I'm dwelling on it or anything, but when I'm with them, they come up, you know, those feelings come up. And, you know, and I wonder sometimes, you know, what my kids, you know, what triggers them with what we do or don't do or whatever, you know. And, you know, and then at the same time, I'm like, you know, there's nothing I can do about what I've already done. I mean, there's just nothing. All I can do is focus on being the best parent to my kids, being at their adult age that they are right now. And, you know that, yeah, they're probably going to have some things that they have to work on inside of themselves related to what happened when we were all younger. And, you know, and I have to forgive myself for just not being, if I look back and I say, okay, you know, I could have done better here, I could have done better there, I could have done this, or I could have done that, you know, I could berate myself forever, but I've got to forgive myself for not living up to this expectation I have of what I should have been, you know, which doesn't, you know, you can't do anything about that, you know, what we should have been. And then, you know, and just work on just having a great relationship now. Not that we had a bad relationship back then, but like you said, you know, kids latch on to things that happen. You have no idea what that might be unless they tell you. And, you know, and even if they do tell you, you may or may not be able to work on something like that together. I mean, who knows? Because their feelings about it may be, like you said, you may not even remember it. And so we have to remember that the things that are going on with our kids or with our parents didn't have really anything to do with us. They're all inside of them. And I think that, Catherine, when you talk about not having feelings like other people, I think it's that, you know, it's that whole recognizing that, you know, all of this mumbo jumbo that we build up for ourselves is inside of ourselves. It doesn't have anything to do with you. It doesn't have anything to do with the other person. It's inside of yourself. And when we recognize that, we can let go of so much shit, so much stuff that causes problems. You know, it's like I listened to my husband talking about some of his friends and their relationships, and it just boggles my mind, the shit that they go through because of all this mumbo jumbo that they build up in their heads about what may or may not be happening, or what that other person's doing, or what the person is saying, or how they're la la la, or me, you know. And I see the same thing with people at work. I'm just like, God, you're just making you're making your own life and relationship miserable because you can't take responsibility for your own feelings. It's all, you're blaming everybody else for what's going on out there, and you're allowing all that mumbo jumbo to build up and build up and build up, and you just don't have any control over it. And I, you know, but I think back in my own life, and I'm like, I was there. I did the same, not exactly the same thing. I was a little bit less like that than I think a lot of people are. But, you know, I see it. It's the same thing. I look at people and I'm like, God, you're freaking crazy. You're making yourself crazy. I feel bad for them, but, you know, that is what it is. But back to my parents. So, like, you know, I was thinking on kind of my relationship, earlier relationships before my husband and my husband, and maybe the role that some of my experiences with my parents might have played in that. And, you know, and now I can look back and I can see those things. I can see how that affected those relationships because of some of those things that kind of stood out for me with my parents was, you know, when my parents were, well, I was probably a pre-teenager, give or take, somewhere in that age 10 to 18 age, I don't know, somewhere back there. And my parents were really struggling in their relationship. And, you know, my mom, she was just very, very emotional. And my dad was just completely closed off. And he would just sit there and not say anything. And she'd be yelling and screaming and trying to express what she was feeling and what she was needing and wanting and blah, 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 you know. And it was just this big emotional explosion. And he would just sit there and watch TV, you know. And for me, seeing all that without consciously thinking this is how I'm going to be, I realized that later in my relationships, I was a lot like my dad. I didn't want to face whatever it was that was pissing me off or upsetting me or doing that other person was this or that or whatever, you know. So I just kind of like put my head in the sand and act like it wasn't happening. And you know, and I was in some abusive relationships because of it, you know, because I just like, oh, I just need to be in a relationship because that's what we're supposed to do. But yet all this crap is happening and I'm just going to pretend like it's not, you know, I mean, it's stuff like that. And then also if I would get emotional, then I would have this kind of feeling of, God, I'm going to explode and be all crazy, you know, like my mom was during those times, which now I completely understand why she was having those explosions. But when I was a kid, I thought she was just crazy, you know, and I didn't want to be that way. So, I don't know. I recognize how those things, you know, played out in my relationships earlier on. Now, I feel like I see things more clearly now than what I did when I was younger. But we've done so much work, all of us together, on, you know, reading all these personal development books and looking at and examining and you know, questioning all of these things. And I think that, you know, it puts us in a different place and a different perspective for everything, you know, relationships with everyone. And yeah, so there's a few other things I want to say, but I'm sure you all have something to say since I've been talking for so long.
I really like what everyone's saying, and yeah, Catherine, about why would we keep looking at the past and going back to the past that happened 60 years ago? And as I'm looking at myself, it's like when my father left my mother, you know, I was at the end of high school and I was going to college in a few months. And for me, and that I didn't really seem to care, you know, even though he left in a weird way and, you know, what people would say is a traumatic way. But I went to college, I attracted this amazing boyfriend, you know, things were good. But, you know, what my mom was going through, she kept putting on me and saying things to me that I think over time made me start attracting different kind of men that weren't so nice. And so then and then as I was getting more spiritual, like late 20s, early 30s, you know, people say, well, see how this compares to your past and how did your father treat you and this and that. So it made me like start going through all that when I felt like I was doing fine without having to look at that shit. And I feel like sometimes when you're looking at that, it just makes it worse and puts it more in your subconscious and stuff. So yeah, it's like, what are we supposed to do? And so, like, even recently, I have a friend talking about trauma this, trauma that, look at the past and da-da-da. And I'm like, I've done it enough times. Like, I don't want to look at the past anymore. And I love one of my best friends. Anytime I bring up like father issues, she's like, okay, enough with the father issues. Just move forward. That's gone. It's in the past. You've learned enough of it. Just move forward. And I'm like, yeah, like, why do we have to keep looking at such trauma? And I get, like, if a relationship pattern keeps coming up, like, yeah, it's something to look at. Why is this pattern keep coming up? If it's not serving, what is it in me that's attracting this? Or what is it that, yeah, is it something from the past of the way I dealt with my father or my mother? But look at it and move on and drop it and stop going back to it over and over. So that's where I struggle. Like, where do you draw the line of like, okay, let me look back and learn from it, or no, I'm done. Like, move forward and create a new reality if that's what I want. Create a new whatever inside of me that's going to attract better relationships rather than dwelling on the past, which keeps bringing up the trauma, which keeps attracting the same shit in. So it really is like confusing. Like, how do we do this? Crazy human life.
I think you hit the hammer right on the head of the nail, though, is, learning that balance of how to go back and, do the review and the pulling out and getting what you need so that way you can adjust your life for moving forward so you can move forward from that past. But I think it's, like, I said earlier, I get into that thought and then I just can't keep it going, and it just becomes that, like I said in the chat, you spiral down that rabbit hole, and you have to get to a point. And it's not really that anybody else tells you that, even though somebody else might tell you that you need to get past that. But until you get to that point where you say, look, this is enough is enough, I've looked at it, I've analyzed it, I've done everything with it, it's time for me to move on, and let me move on so I can move forward to get what I'm wanting and looking for. But I think the key thing is to know what the language is I need to put out, so that way I can then manifest back to me what I want. So that's where I'm at. I'm trying to learn what I need to put out to the people, so that in turn, I get back what I need and they get what they need, and it becomes a more harmonious and more, natural type of feeling, just like we get when we're out in nature, or when we're, doing those little things that give us that peace. And I think, that's the key, where knowing when to stop.
We're all so different. And I have to bring this up because it's in this chapter we're talking about. They mention, and it's funny because I already kind of mentioned it about my ex getting me flowers every time he was abusive. A lot of men are taught that, all women love flowers. Okay, I'm going to tell you right now, for the record, yes, probably all women love flowers, but some women, like myself, and I'm going to take a guess here and say Sandy Root, prefer flowers to be alive and growing, not cut off, dead in a vase. Okay? So don't kill the flowers for me, is what I'm saying.
I was so right there with you on that, Catherine. I can't tell you how many times I told my husband he would bring me flowers. It was kind of earlier in the relationship, but he would bring me a bouquet of flowers, and I'd be like, oh, those are so pretty, but you just killed them. Like, I just assume you bring me one that's alive, I just want it to keep on living because I like plants. I like growing them, I'm like, but what's funny is I would say those things multiple times to him, and he never really got it. He never brought me live plants. He just would still bring me flowers. It was just like some kind of weird thing in his head, when it wasn't all the time. And it was just like these random, he was just sitting there thinking about me and saw the flowers and thought, here, I'm going to bring flowers, just being sweet. But yeah, I completely get that. I prefer plants for sure. Living ones. Sandy, you tell, yeah.
I got flowers the other day. My dying flowers. But it was sweet. I knew it was coming from a good place, but Yeah, I know what you ladies are saying.
Well, and when they're cut and they're already there dying, there is like somewhat of a want to at least make their life, worth something by getting them and then enjoying them because they've already been cut. So I don't know. That's another mind warp thing that I go on, but not really because I don't give it much thought. I just don't buy flowers, and I tell other people don't buy me flowers. But I think dogs. God gave us dogs and cats and goldfish, to keep us sane. And I worry about the people that don't have a connection with nature and animals. Like how do they survive this world? Because really that's how that's how I stay as semi-sane as I am, is through those connections. And so, but there's people that have a zero connection to those things and they're just in their mind all the time. And I guess as an Uber driver, I'm getting to hear lots of conversations, between people in my back seat. And of course, I would never share those because I consider them confidential, but it's just shocking to me, some of the things that people are tripped up over. And some of the conversations that people have, especially like the new daters, like I don't know if they meet online or what, and then they're in the back seat, they're asking all these questions. And like, I just want to turn around and say, okay, just get the hell away from each other right now. Like, and it's kind of hilarious because I don't know if I'm just, since I have experienced abuse in the past, I have a meter for it. I can sense it. And there are seriously times where I want to just turn around and say, this is an abusive person. Get the fuck away from him right now, because I see the red flags. I hear the red flags. And, but I, I guess, again, because my past, I'm just set up to sense those things. And it's shocking, like you said, Samantha, people are taught that they have to be in a relationship to be somebody or something. Like to be successful, you have to be in a relationship, which is such bullshit. That maybe that was like back in the tribal days, the clan days or something, like everybody had to be hooked up to promote the species or something, but like it's not like that anymore. We have plenty of humans on the planet. We don't need to really make any more right now. And I see people going into abusive relationships rather than being alone. And I'm not saying that there's, certainly there's times in my life where maybe I'm looking at a beautiful sunset or something and I think, oh, it'd be nice for somebody else to see this with me because right now I can see it. Nobody else, is here with me seeing it. But thank God, my grandmother was a strong, independent woman and she didn't set that expectation for me that I had to be with somebody. If anything, she probably set the opposite expectation, and I just, because as you started this chapter out, if everything good or bad is based on these relationships that we have, then teaching people from day one through our Walt Disney movies about these fairy tale relationships that are non-existent as far as I can tell, and then people are fucked up the rest of their life because of these bad relationships. I just, I talk with the young girls because I'm in a college town, and I kind of counsel a little bit with these young girls. Some of the conversations that I hear, and let them know that, you know, their life is not going to make it or break it based on, you know, they don't have to be in a relationship. They especially don't have to be in an abusive relationship just to be in a relationship, you know, and a lot of them are. And it's really, I had a great conversation with some girls the other day, and you know, I'm not teaching you people to be anti-relationship, but just that they don't have to compromise everything about themselves to be in one, to be somebody. But I think we're taught from very early on that you know, you grow up, you get your education, you get married, you live happily ever after, and it's bullshit.
Yeah, to me, it's crazy to go in a relationship that just cuts your being off like that. Like, I've never been that way, thank goodness, but I can't imagine. And yeah, I know so many people do that because, yeah, you have to be in a relationship to be complete or whatever it is. Yeah, like we're just ingrained that we have to be in a relationship a lot of the times, but much rather be alone than anything that doesn't feel right. I mean, even if it's not abusive, I know when there's something like the last guy I was dating, great guy, like really amazing. He saw me the way I wanted to be seen, but there was just something that wasn't connecting, and I couldn't force it and had to let it go. But we have to just be so in tune with ourselves and what we need, whether it's explainable in words. Like, people would ask me what happened with him, and I'm like, I don't know. Like, there's just an energetic something was just not. He's amazing. He's blah blah blah, but energetically something wasn't there for me. And so being super aware of what we need and honoring that, even if it's hard to have to let that situation go because it's comfortable and you have someone to do things with and, you know, talk to and share your day with. It's important to really honor ourselves in the end, because that's all we have, really. And how in the chapter, you know, he was talking about this woman who was getting married, and she was so confused of, like, why would you have to work on a marriage? And so, you know, a lot of people do have this idea of it's fairy tale land, like the, what does he call it, the stage one love, the in love stage, where you think that's going to last forever. And where stage two, the covenant love, which usually comes after 2 years, is like where you really are, you have to do the work, and it's not just going to be this fairy tale land all the time. But that so many people go into relationships thinking it's going to stay like this fairy tale forever and end up in divorce. What was he saying? Like, there's 60%. This was her remarriage. Like, even 60% of those who remarry will experience a second divorce. So that's like, it's super high, because people are like living delusional, thinking that this in love fairy tale land is real, and it's not. It's the relationship. Obviously takes patience and work and time and growing, and you're both changing in different ways over time too. So always having to reconnect and yeah. So yeah, that's all I'll say for now. I'm sort of mind blown.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you know, I think I'm fortunate. I did get to see where somebody did model in a way a good, you know, what I think was a good marriage. I'm not saying it was the best. I'm not saying it was the, you know, one for everybody. But my grandparents, they were married 51 years. My grandmother married her when she was 18. They were 12 years in age difference, but they were married 51 years. And as I've gotten older, I just always thought they were just, you know, happy in the. But as I've gotten older, and from my mom and my aunt and stuff and things like that, I've learned things about them that paint a more clearer picture that, yeah, there were rough times, there were hard times, there were bad times, there were, you know, but they worked through them to work on their marriage to make it last 51 years. That's an example I want to live by. You know, I've never been married, and after I'm going, I probably never will be. But, you know, I still hold on to that because I believe that, you know, it is capable and able to be done. I also look at my brother and his wife. They've been married 25 years. and I know they've had up and downs and stuff and things like that, and how they work through it, and hearing some of what Samantha and her husband have gone through, how they've had to work through it. It's like any relationship, you have to work through it. You have to get through the ups and downs, or if it's not the right relationship, find the means and ways to kind of move on and let them go and let it be and move forward. Like you were saying, Sandy, you had to, great guy, had lots of things that, were what you wanted, but something still was not right. It was not the right fit. So why keep something around that doesn't fit, in the right way? Because, you know, like clothing, if it doesn't fit right, it doesn't feel right. And then you feel kind of out of sorts. When it fits right, it fits right, and you feel good and you feel your best. And when it's the right relationship, granted, it will be up and down, but when it fits, I think you're more willing to work through it and work for it, so that way it can last and be there and be something that is what you're working towards. And I think that's, something that I look at, but I don't have any grandiose ideas that unless I meet the right person here, but I'm also, still actively looking too. So I'm at that stage too. So, but I think, you brought out some great points, both you, Catherine, and, what you were saying.
I wonder how my life would be different if I hadn't thought that that was like the goal in life, get in a relationship, get married, have kids, blah, blah, blah. And if I had just worked on my relationship with myself first, what would life be like? Would my whatever relationship that I may have gotten into after working on myself or knowing myself, what would that have been like? Would I have been in a long-term relationship? I don't know. And but I feel like that's something that we fail as a society, is to teach that, it's that relationship with yourself that is the most important. Because if you can have a great relationship with yourself, then other relationships are going to be easier, because you won't be creating all that drama, and you won't be obsessing over all these little things, and you won't be so worried about whether or not this person does this or doesn't do that or whatever, because you can be more like that. Your dog, he's perfectly happy with himself, so he's kind of like, whatever, as far as, whatever you do is whatever you do. I'm here because I want to be here, because I'm having a good time, and and if you want to make your own life miserable, so be it. Just sit here and watch. I don't know. I mean, I have recognized that, since I've done a lot of work on myself, that our relationship has been a whole lot easier. There's less stuff that we have to work on. And so I wonder, I mean, I do recognize what he's talking about here in this book about, the beginning of a relationship being really passionate, and when that kind of passion kind of, simmers down, and then you actually are in the part of the relationship where you got to work. I recognize that because I went through it. And, but I think more in terms of now that I've done a lot of work on myself, and of how that might be completely different, if there was a, situation, if something happened to my husband and I was out there in the world single, how things would be so much different. And it would be interesting to study. I don't know. Does that sound silly? I feel like everything in my life is like, this thing to study. What did I do? Why did I do it? That's an interesting thing. It's like a big experiment, life, and just watching it like I'm a scientist, and seeing how it all plays out is fascinating. So,
yeah, I often look back too, like with my love in college, like we recently reconnected, and it's the same, like we just have this amazing soul connection. He's in a new relationship, but we're all friends, like have this amazing soul connection. It's really weird, but so we become really close again. But it's like, I imagine that too, like what if in my 20s or whatever, late teens, we were together. Like we got married and had kids. I'd have like grown kids now, and how would that have been? Because we were looking back, we were such little punk kid troublemakers. Like, and I was so gone, like different person. Like I can't imagine us like having done that life, and where would it have taken us? So yeah, I often look at different scenarios and like from the past too, and wonder how different would I be, or would it, in the end, I probably would have found the spiritual path anyway too somehow. And who knows? Yeah, it's just interesting to look in the past and think, if I took a different path, how would that have that movie been? So, it's interesting.
I don't know. Life is fascinating, and I got to be honest. I really like looking at it sometimes, just to examine it and all the intricacies and without taking it so personally, because that's where our pain is. It's like when we take it all personally, like it's a personal, something happening to us and it's horrible or whatever, versus this just really interesting science experiment that we're all taking part in, and a social experiment. I don't know. I have no idea. But we're at the top of the hour, guys. Anybody have? Let's just share final thoughts, and then we can wrap it up for today.
Well, it's the practice of many spiritual traditions, but I think one of the best things that we can do is to take the observer position, to step back and just look at it as sort of an outside party, and not to detach from all your feelings. I mean, you need to explore why certain things trigger you and stuff like that, but most of the time, for most situations, if you can just take a step back and look at it as the observer, and find, like, sometimes I just find it interesting, like how I react. Recently, I got really, really angry, and I had to examine, wow. I mean, it was like shockingly angry, and I had to examine, wow, where did that come from? What's causing that? And that's good to look into it, but just to dwell on in your mind constantly, I think you can drive yourself crazy and make life a lot more complicated than what it really is. And always keep in mind, is this going to matter in 5 years? Like some days you just have a day where you feel like, I mean, I'm not saying that everybody's suicidal, but I'm sure that people have days and they're just like, what's the point? Like I should just check out of here or whatever. Our life is so short. It goes by like so quickly. And this can't be all there is, guys. I mean, just this little life here, like all of this was not invented, just created, just for this one little life. So there's a lot more going on that we don't understand. And we really, I believe, create our own heaven or hell by how much we let our mind influence things and how much we get hung up on things. So, take a step back, take a breath, ask, is this going to matter 5 years from now? Or would this matter if, I found out I had 3 days to live? Would this really matter right now? If you can take that little bit of a detached stance, a lot of stuff goes away. A lot of stuff just goes away.
Yeah, I like what you just said, Catherine, because I tend to be a little more into it and not be quite so detached. And I think sometimes if I were to just step back a little bit, like you said, and just detach a little bit and just look at it from an observer, I'm trying to do that more. I think I am doing it a little bit more. I think it will help me get a better picture of what is going on, so that way then I can make a better decision on how to move forward. And I think that's the part of a key to becoming more like that and being able to use that as a way of, like Samantha said, learn from it, grow from it, let it be what it is, but just remember that, um, yeah, it's like a big social science, whatever you want to call it, thing, And I agree with you. There's more to this than just what we're involved with in this current life. I think there is more, and a lot more that we don't, fully understand, and won't until we're in that next, uh, like you said, heaven or hell or whatever. Where I believe in heaven and hell both. So wherever I'm at. So at that point, I think I'll understand a lot more then. But until now, it's, you know, learning how to navigate here and getting the best, uh, working towards the best me that I can be to put out there to share and give to other people so that they can get what they need.
I don't have much more to say, but I love the conversation. I feel like we could go on, and I'm really looking forward to delving into the love languages. I guess that starts next week, right? Yay!
Yeah. Oh, this is a great conversation. I think you're right. We could talk about it for a while. But okay, so today ends chapter 2. Next week is chapter 3, and I believe it starts with the first love language, which is affirmations. And if you have not taken the little profile um, thing to determine what your own love language is, or someone else in your life to do it together, I recommend this is the time to do it, because we're going to start talking about each of these 5 love languages coming up in the next few weeks, and it'll be good for you to have a baseline to start with, because I kind of wonder if we go back afterwards and take that profile quiz again, if it'll come out the same or if it will be different. But um, it's going to be interesting going through these. And guys, if you are watching this as a recording, there's going to be some links below this video where you can connect with us on our Facebook group. You can find the recording for this in an audio version on SoundCloud. I don't always mention that, but you can find us on SoundCloud at Mindset Mastery Collective. Just search for Mindset Mastery Collective, or there will be a link below this video where you can find that, and then all the links to the different resources, the study guide, the profile quiz, the audio book, the hardbound book, whatever you want to get for this. It'll be in the links below. So jump in with us. Meet us over at mindsetmasterycollective.com. That'll take you directly to our Facebook group and can connect with us. And then hopefully, if you'd like, you can jump in the conversation with us next week. So with that, have a great, awesome, amazing week. And we'll see you next week on the Saturday Morning Mastermind. Bye for now.